Thank you for holding today's important hearing. As a senator whose dream of becoming a mother was made possible through the miracle that is IVF, I am uniquely situated to remind this committee of a basic principle. We can recognize the value of potential human life, acknowledge that fertilized eggs are incredibly precious and valuable, and we can also accept the fact that an embryo is not yet a human being. No one, and I mean no one, better understands the hopes and dreams that viable embryos represent than an IVF patient struggling with infertility. No one better understands the pure, unmitigated joy that flows when a successful transfer of embryos results in pregnancy. And sadly, for us women who have lived through the soul-crushing, bone-deep agony of having that hope destroyed after completing unsuccessful rounds of IVF or of suffering a miscarriage, we experience in the most painful manner possible the fundamental reality that while every fertilized egg is unbelievably precious, unfortunately, not all will become a living, breathing child whose laughter and joy will fill our hearts and enrich our lives. Federal law wisely reflects this fact by defining the terms person, human being, child, and individual to only include, and I quote, every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive at any stage of development, end quote. Section 8 of Title I of the United States Code is consistent with Ranking Member Graham's common sense observation that, and I quote, nobody's ever been born in a freezer, end quote. Attempting to deny this reality, attempting to rewrite state constitutions and laws to define a fertilized egg as a human child, which is what the embryonic personhood crusade achieved in Alabama, is an affront to the millions of aspiring parents who struggle to conceive. It's a threat to the special separation of church and state. It's a betrayal of our great American spirit that reveres scientific discovery and progress. Those seeking to ban IVF won't stop at one medical procedure. Their ultimate mission is to extinguish the legacy of American ingenuity that was born in the experiments of Benjamin Franklin and continued through the groundbreaking IVF conception and birth of Elizabeth Carr in December of 1981. Look, every American has the right to personally believe that an embryo is a human child and to live their life in accordance with such beliefs by refusing to receive, provide, or offer IVF services, just as every American should have the right to decide whether, when, and how to build their family. But Congress must draw a line against a personhood movement's abuse of government power to force every American to live their life in accordance with that movement's moral beliefs. Opponents of IVF are being dishonest in claiming that the Alabama Supreme Court never banned IVF. Defining the cluster of cells that comprise an embryo to be a human being, and even the single cell that is fertilized prior to it becoming an embryo, they're defining that as an extrauterine child entitled to all the legal rights and protections of a person. This may not be an explicit IVF ban, but make no sense. As we witness in Alabama, it's an awfully effective way to ban IVF. After all, Alabama's criminal code defines murder as intentionally causing the death of a person. And just like that, 1 + 1 = 2. When Alabama defined a fertilized egg to be a person, and their code defines murder as intentionally causing the death of a person, the intentional disposal of an embryo, even a non-viable one that could cause a miscarriage if you were to implant it, which is a common practice in IVF, that disposal became a Class A felony. The flawed solution to Alabama Republicans crafted to restore IVF validates this fact by branding women and doctors that receive or provide IVF as de facto criminals in need of broad criminal and civil immunity simply because they require medical help to start a family. So let me say again, the law that was passed in Alabama does not negate the fact that the destruction of an embryo is the destruction of a human being. All that law that was recently signed into law says is that we're just not going to prosecute you. The chaos, confusion, and outrage in Alabama was a chilling preview of the dystopian future that awaits us if Congress fails to pass IVF protections that are effective and enforceable. That is why any senator that claims to support nationwide IVF protections should join me and the 48 senators co-sponsoring my bill in voting to pass the Access to Family Building Act. Our pro-family, pro-freedom bill would establish a nationwide right for patients to receive IVF. It would allow insurers to cover IVF, and it would also allow doctors to provide IVF in accordance with, and I make it clear that we state this in the bill, widely accepted and evidence-based medical standards of care. Unfortunately, there's a bad faith effort to confuse the public about my bill, using absurd hypotheticals that are an insult to families struggling with infertility. So let's be clear, under S 3612, no healthcare provider would be forced to provide IVF, period. That's because my bill's statutory definition of healthcare provider excludes providers that do not provide or seek to provide IVF. In addition, my bill only intends to protect IVF services provided in accordance with widely accepted and evidence-based medical standards of care. Wild-eyed hypotheticals like creating gene-edited designer babies, and I can't believe I have to say this, but it was brought up by my colleague who stood up to oppose my move for unanimous consent to pass the bill. She said that my bill would actually allow for the creation of human-animal chimeras, such as half-human, half-horse hybrids. Neither are widely accepted or consistent with evidence-based medical standards of care for IVF. Thus, S 3612 would not protect such procedures. Bottom line, Congress has the power to prevent what happened to those families in Alabama from ever happening again. So let's come together and achieve that goal. Let's pass the Access to Family Building Act to enshrine in federal law the right to receive, provide, and cover IVF, so that more families like mine can hold their precious babies after all those long years of struggle of infertility and finally have that child that they've dreamt of for decades. Thank you. I yield back.